Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing something a little chaotic, maybe a little bit cursed. Something you've probably seen already, the random colour challenge. Basically I used a noise layer and liquify to expand to pick out random colours for each section of my drawing. I didn't want to change the hue, I didn't want to change saturation, just a little bit of suffering to try and make this work. If you've done this before, you know that some palettes can feel like a crime against art. Mine wasn't that bad. The green skin tone and neon blue hair definitely threw me off, but let's get into it and talk about how I handled that, what I liked and what nearly broke me. So, I sketched and inked the entire piece first. My goal was to remove any of the influence of the colour from the character design itself. I didn't want to adjust shapes to suit certain colours, no designing around the palette, just pure neutral character design that I'd later force into a random colour scheme. So, for example, I very easily could have made her an alien with green skin, but I felt that took a bit of the challenge out of it. I wanted the challenge to be working with what I had in terms of colour. So I created a noise layer, which is just static pixels. I used the liquify tool to expand it until one colour started dominating. Whatever that colour was, I locked it in and assigned it to that part of the character. For example, I did skin first and ended up with that really neon green. It was halfway between like alien and nymph, and I repeated the same process for the hair, the bows, the eyes, so on. Each colour was pulled independently, there was zero coordination between them, so instead of this unified palette, I ended up with 5 or 6 unrelated colours, and they all were forced into a section of the drawing. For example, the purple blush. I probably would not have done purple blush for a green character, but that's the nature of the challenge of getting to make these colours that would typically clash with each other and making them look harmonious. Because I knew the colour was coming after the sketch, it had to be strong enough to hold up on its own. So I wanted to go with a very soft, straight on view. I kept the composition very centred. I left room for some floating elements, maybe to include some lighting. In the butterflies, I could add a little bit of a glow to them and have a couple of different light sources around her. Once I started dropping in the actual colours, the vibe kind of came on its own. The green pushed the character into like maybe an alien or fantasy direction. The blue hair and all of the bioluminescence with her eyes just really pushed the vibe that happened by the end of the drawing. So the butterflies, for me, it kind of fills the space around her. It helps tie the colours together visually, and even later on they gave me a chance to, like I said, help with the lighting around the character. The line art was finished before I saw any of the colours. So normally I'd shift the lines to match the palette that I'm working with. So if a palette has predominantly reds, I might use a dark red line art colour. I could have changed the line art after I saw the colours, but I felt like that wasn't in the spirit of the challenge, so I decided to leave the line art colour black. But I think this might have been a mistake. I think I could have even randomly generated a colour for the line art and make that work, but that kind of added a little bit too much chaos, because if you get a colour like a really neon pink, that's kind of hard to make work without giving myself a little bit of leeway to edit and change that colour to suit the vibes. So it kind of stands out for the line art, but I think I really attempted to make this line art, I guess, good. Like, I wanted good line weight, I wanted the line art to stand on its own. I think I kind of slept on the hair a little bit. I think I could have done a little bit better on the hair, but it wasn't the focus of the challenge, so I'm giving myself a wee bit of leniency. Rendering is kind of where my suffering peaked. The biggest issue I had is that there was no neutrals. I couldn't mute or balance anything because every colour was already decided for me. Normally I'd lean into maybe desaturated colours for skin shadows or background separation, but here I was kind of forced to use the shade of green that I had. Not ideal, but somehow it created a kind of glow that worked better than expected. But if it was up to me, like, maybe I could have pushed the boundaries a little bit more while I was picking shadows and highlights for the skin. I very much tried to stay within the realm of the colour that I got, so using a slightly darker green and a slightly lighter green to colour her skin. I did shift the hue very slightly either way to achieve a cooler and a warmer colour of the same green. But I think maybe in future, like, it would be okay during the rendering process if I was to render normally while having the base colours picked for me. So even if I have a blue skin tone, it doesn't mean I have to render in blue. I can render in whatever colour I want. So I might, if I do this challenge again, I think I know what I'm going to do differently. The eye whites were exciting to me. I wasn't originally going to change their colour, but I do quite like in my characters having quite different out their eyes. So the colour I got was a pale cyan instead of like white, and for me, I kind of wanted to lean into it and exaggerate it, and it felt like she could have been blind if she wanted to be. It makes her feel a little bit more magical, and the cyan kind of works with her skin tone, so I was quite happy to get that colour. The ribbons, I think, could have been a different colour. They were this muted pink and it didn't fit with anything else. Everything else kind of had a blue, green, purple vibe, but because I'd already drawn them in, I had to find a way to make them feel intentional. So I wanted to push their silhouette, giving them enough movement and rhythm that they felt like a purposeful design choice, rather than an absolute accident. The butterflies were kind of a good safety net. Compositionally, it was too vertical, too static without them, so I added the butterflies in, and it kind of gives the eye something to follow, and I reused some of the existing colours to make them feel integrated without breaking my own rules. Now, I did predetermine what sections of the drawing were going to have what colours, so I knew the blush and the lips were going to be the same. I knew the eye whites, and I think her top are the same colour. I think the butterflies and her actual eyeball are the same colour, so I wanted the colours spread evenly across the palette so that if the bows were pink, they had something else pink to kind of play around with. So having the blue butterflies on the top, I think it really pulls the composition together. Would I recommend you to do this challenge? I mean, if you want to break out of your habits, yeah, but if you're already stressed, maybe I don't recommend it. The way I did it made it a little bit harder than a regular random colour challenge. Starting with the sketch first kind of forced me to treat colour as a separate puzzle without being able to change the design. So it made me think about colour as maybe values and shapes, not just the aesthetic of the drawing. You kind of have to work backwards from a finished idea rather than sketching into one. You have to commit to bad ideas and fix them, not swap them. So, for example, if you get stuck with a skin tone that you just don't like, and maybe it's bright yellow and you don't know how to render bright yellow, you can treat this as a learning moment to maybe learn how to do that. It was frustrating, but it was fun. There was no pressure to make it pretty. It wasn't always going to be. I could focus on problem solving the issues that I had, instead of worrying about having a finished piece. It felt like more sketchy, even though I'm quite happy with how it came out. It was still fun to draw. And even here you can see, like, I'm narrowing in my shadows and highlights before I chose the colours, because again, I did not want those colours to influence my decision making in terms of shadows and stuff like that. So I used normal colours, like my own decisions for the lighting, but those are the only two layers. I did a multiply layer and an overlay layer just to get some lighting down so it didn't influence where my where the vibe went. So yeah, this is what happens when you let noise decide the entire palette after you finish your line art. Let me know if you'd like to try this out, if you'd like to see me draw this more, and if you have any ideas for this challenge. Would you rather I sketch a character after I pick the colours? Let me know how you would approach this level of challenge. Everything is linked below if you want to see more. Support my work on VGen, Coffee or Etsy. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I will see you in the next one. Bye!